Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chenard. I'm here with Tyler Jones and Glen Willis. We're recording in the dead middle of August. Not necessarily a whole lot going on with the Hawks at the moment, but some interesting things. I don't know, where do you want to start with? Maybe do you want to start with the Trae Young lack of extension? It seems like everybody's sort of resigned to just the status quo. Does that seem fair?
It's hard to know. I mean, none of us know like what the conversations aren't happening, what Trey wants, what the Hawks want to do. What makes sense in that regard. People in the vacuum of the content vacuum we're in now, people are, I think, speculating a ton just because there's really nothing else, not much else to talk about. I'm not really paying attention to anything that's out there. I think that they'll work it out when they work it out.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. The trade extension thing is just not that interesting of a topic to me. If it didn't happen first day, July, whenever he was available, it's probably going to be a drawn out process, and they have the whole year plus to get an extension done anyway. So it's just like he's going to be on the team next year. That's all I care about. And he'll probably be on the team the year after that. So like, I mean, there's just no the thing about anything about these trade talks is like, all right, what's the team? Who's the team that he's pining to go to, or what's the team that's trying to maneuver themselves that they can afford to bring on a Trae Young? And like, we kind of know teams weren't that excited to trade for him relative to his value to the Hawks, and so I'm guessing like his market is pretty. It's not bare per se, but it's just like Trae's a unique type of player, and you have to build your team around him. And like, who are these teams that are have the cap space but are also trying to win a title? Because he's not trying to repeat what he's done with the Hawks the last couple of years. He's trying to win a championship. So, like, if you're telling me the Miami Heat are setting their ducks in a row, I'm like, all right, name the good basketball players besides Bam Adebayo, please. Like, just name one good basketball player. If you say Andrew Wiggins or Tyler Hero, I'm like, don't waste my time. Like, don't waste my time. Like, what's Tyler Hero in this league next to Trae Young? Like, that's just an awful fit next to each other. And Andrew Wiggins, like, he's a fine player, but like that's not you're not winning a title with that. So I'm not like if you're telling me it's the Miami Heat, I'm like, all right, whatever. Sure. We gotta create some more content to get us through August. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Until I hear like a credible report saying there's a team out there that wants Trae or that Trae's looking to leave, which is not the case. Everything we've heard is that Trae wants to be here next year, and he's excited for the season next year. So I'm like, what are we talking about? They're negotiating a contract. Like,
Yeah, and we talked about it. He was instrumental in recruiting guys to come play on this team this season. So, I mean, he seems invested from that vantage point, all those data points and stuff. We don't know like what he wants to do with that option year or not. I mean, yeah, I'm sure his agent is kind of telling him if we do A, it looks like this. If we do B, it looks like this. So, it's out there, but and to me, this is the best roster they've ever put around Trey his whole career, easily to me. They got a big that can shoot. They got multiple point of attack defenders. They got shooters up and down the roster. And I mean, to me, I'm just anxious to see how it allows Trey to kind of get back to being, to have his dynamic passing and creation even taken to another level because of what he has around him offensively, especially going into this year.
yeah, and like just overall, I think Glenn, you made the point where it's just like it's the vacuum. There's nothing to talk about, and so like Trey's the next guy up because something hasn't happened yet. We don't know. There's a vacuum of information, so that's kind of where we're at with that.
I mean, to
And
me,
everybody's pointing at the De'Aaron Fox contract and what that mean or doesn't mean. I think the reporting is they committed to doing that before they made the trade, and so they were following through. So anyway, Kevin, you're going to jump in there.
oh, yeah, man, sorry, you distracted me with De'Aaron Fox. I'm losing my train of thought. It was such an awful contract. I guess what I was going to say is that, coming into the summer, my expectation was that nothing was going to happen. Like, if you asked me in March, hey, what's going to happen with this contract extension? It just seems like the window at which the Hawks would want to sign him and the window at which he would want to take the contract just seemed like those were not going to overlap. And I want to ask Tyler because I think he tweeted something like this. This is the best Hawks team of my lifetime. So let that stew for a second. But additionally, though, does this put pressure on the Hawks to play well coming out of the gate? Because if somehow this deep team doesn't get it done and you get closer to the trade deadline, now it seems like, hey, maybe it's time to get into some action and worry about trading him.
Well, I think the pressure is on, but it's not necessarily because of Trae's contract. I think the pressure is on just because they expect this team to win. Like this is a team, like I said, this is the best Hawks team of my lifetime. Um, since being a Hawks fan, which started in 2004 when they drafted Josh Smith, uh, who like I knew growing up. So that's kind of how I got into the door here. But like this team should win a lot of games. Like they should be really good. They shouldn't just be like, oh, they're 47 wins. This team should be trying to shoot for, top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, bare minimum. So like if they're not winning early, that suggests something is wrong. And if there's something wrong, then yeah, the alarm bells are going to go off, but it's going to be because the team's not good. Like we've done all this. We got shooting, we got point of attack defenders, we got rim protection, we got multiple bigs, we can do multiple actions, and we're still not winning at a high enough level. Then the Hawks got to look at the guys making a lot of money and be like, all right, Trae, like then the extension probably might not be coming. Like if they're not winning, they might look to trade him, not necessarily because he wants out, but because the Hawks are like, we're not good enough. I don't expect that to happen personally. I think this team's going to win a lot of games, but the pressure is absolutely on for them. Now, it's one thing if they're like losing a lot of close games, but their point differential suggests something else. But if like I think there's a more nuanced take where it's not just bare wins and losses. Like how are they winning and how are they losing? Right? If they're losing close games because they don't have the chemistry together in late game situations, whatever. I think that's different than they go on a 3-game win streak, then they go on a 3-game losing streak like they've done the last couple of years now, basically. So like if they're the same team, that's the problem. If it's different, if they're consistently stringing together big wins, 10+ win with good point differentials, good point spreads, I think that's a different situation and where the Hawks will be like, all right, we're losing some close games. We're better than what our record is showing. Our metrics show us this. We're good with this team. And that's where it's like we got to give these guys time to gel and like get it together. But the talent is there for
Do you have any thoughts on that one, Glenn?
I mean, there's a lot of roster change, but this is a more veteran group than they had last year. Veterans tend to figure it out faster and know what they need to do and know what I got to plug in. And when things get off track, veterans are more apt to just like, hey, let's talk it out. What's going on? Like, what are our issues? Why is this lineup not working? Or what are we doing wrong? Why are we missing this? Why are we missing that? And for me, like last year, one of the reasons that they ended up not making the playoffs was we all know the injuries were a situation. But once the injuries happened, they were playing young, inexperienced guys for a lot of the season, or non-rotation guys. That they had no one else to play. Veteran teams tend to figure that stuff out. Like if they're 10 games in and they're 5-5 and it's been up and down, veterans just like, hey, let's figure this stuff out, and that's what they do. And that's why I think you kind of look at all the veterans that are on this team, and I think they're going to be more consistent. I think they're going to be more steady, more stable, and those things. But in every situation, when you have that much roster change, it can take a little bit of time to gel, but I think it generally happens faster with a veteran team.
But with respect to Trae and the trade deadline, do you think that there's any potential that this now turns, what the objectives might be at the trade deadline if they are struggling?
For me, I don't. I mean, I think they should be 100% invested in trade, period. That's my viewpoint. No, I'm not running the show. I'm not running the franchise. I'm not running the front office. None of those things. I'm not qualified to do any of those things. I don't have any experience doing those things. But I look at Trey and it's like, those that say, hey, trade him, like I just think um are just being small-minded and don't have the broader perspective of, and to me, we've talked about like last year, I think was the most visible amount of leadership we've ever seen him show. I think he was awesome in that area. And he was bought into the young guys getting the reps, even though it cost them games. And so in my mind, that amount of buy-in we saw last year suggests he believes in the direction this thing is going. But there was also probably conversations along last year, right? We talked about the trade deadline setting themselves up to have more flexibility in the summer. And we saw what they did with that flexibility in the summer. The trade was probably in the conversation all last season. This is what we're going to try to do. This is what we're setting up for. We're going to put together a real team next year. And so, which probably made it a little easier for Trey to buy into the young guys getting all those reps and getting all those minutes. But now they have a mix of young guys that are getting more established and veterans that are coming in that are very proven. And I have to imagine Trey's thrilled with where this is from a roster standpoint. Now, I don't know. That's me speculating a little bit, but they put a really good roster together, and that probably feels good to him.
Glenn, have you gotten to see any of these Eurobasket preliminary games?
Zero.
Zero. Okay. So I'll be asking Tyler then.
Yes.
What
Yeah,
what
my
have
my
you
my my
seen?
day job is leaving no envelope for that at
Come
all right
on,
now.
you got no clauses for Eurobasket friendlies?
None.
Oh, bummer. Uh, Tyler, what have you seen from Zaccharie Risacher playing for France?
Well, one, unfortunately, like France, they've only played 2 games, and Kevin, you can back me up on this. It's pretty clear they're like everybody who's suiting up is going to play like 10 to 12 minutes. So it's kind of it's pretty hard to get your rhythm, I would say, especially for somebody like Zach, who doesn't have like a dominant move, if that makes sense. Like he doesn't have something in his toolkit where he can just go to, he's more of a feel type player where he's got to feel the flow of the game, and then that's when he attacks on those edges, on those margins. He's not somebody he might get there, but like he's not there right now. So like it is limited sample. However, the thing that if you're a Hawks fan, you got to be excited about is the rebounding. Like, and that's been pretty consistent through both games. On both as an offensive and defensive rebounder, just in general, he's looking to high point the basketball, not necessarily looking to box guys out anymore. And that's important because I think that's one of his traits that he wasn't able to show last year. Like he more or less solidified himself as number 1 pick late in the year last year when he was grabbing and going, being a super dynamic player and a half in the full court. And he wasn't really able to do that last year, partly because he wasn't strong enough to grab contested rebounds. Like anytime and that lack of strength showed up in a variety of ways. It showed up in his ball handling, it showed up in his cutting, showed up in his finishing, and it's what you can see through these 2 games is like he's just a lot stronger. Like, and he's way more confident in himself physically, and that's great to see. So I'm excited to see him these next couple games where they're playing Spain, which is a better basketball team than who they've played before, and with how I guess they've made their cuts. He'll probably play a lot more these next couple games, but we'll see. I'm just, it just overall, it's just great to see him out there because physically he looks great. Like and so like he's playing with a lot more power and a lot more burst than what he showed his rookie year. And that's hopefully like if the rebounding translates, that's going to be huge for Hawks.
Yeah, the first game was a little bit weird. Like I'm going to use a big number here, and I honestly don't think it's hyperbole. Like it felt like the first game there were maybe 8, 9, 10 made threes that went up over his head.
great.
It was
It was
crazy. I mean, part of it was the shots were going in, but then it was also like he didn't seem comfortable like selling out on the contest, and he was just kind of doing these very meek contests, which is such a strange contrast because, like you said, he in every other aspect of the game, he's looked so much more explosive. You know, rebounding, driving, finishing, especially finishing. Like it was very impressive to see him in his rookie year finish with craft, knowing that every time he was going to go body to body with somebody at the rim, he was going the wrong direction. So he was going to have to try to reach around them, go above them, float it over them, you know, finish with the offhand. Like he showed so much craft, knowing that, you know, when he tried to finish, it was going to kind of be a losing battle. Like in these couple of games, you know, when he goes to the rim, like he looks like he has confidence that things are different now. And it's not the same playing Montenegro in Great Britain as it is playing, you know, the Lakers and the Spurs, but he looks very confident in his body. Like he knows that he's going to win some of these, you know, chest to chest battles because one, he's just going to be longer, but he's getting better lift and he's just heavier. Like the physics of it is he's going to win some of these battles, and it's good to see him have that confidence because he already has the craft. It's not like the craft goes away when you start to win some of these physical battles. It's just another bump in his toolbox where he's going to be a really good finisher now, it seems like.
Yeah, like last year, the thing it was one thing is where centers were knocking him off his spots. Like that's what centers do, and that's kind of understandable. And you have to be more like aware of when you have to time you basically have to time your layups better against the center. Like you're never going to win that battle. But he was losing these battles against like sized players when he had the momentum. I think the one that stood out the most is when he had beaten Wagner in the playing game, the first playing game. He had beat him to the rim, and Franz just jumped to contest, and like Zach, even though he had the momentum going towards the rim, and like Franz was, reacting to him like he doesn't have. Franz did not have his momentum challenging shot. He completely like wiped Zach out the play, and I was like, "Oof, that's a tough look," because somebody of Zach's size you would expect to be able to at least be neutral or be ahead there, and he was behind. And like I don't think that's going to happen again anymore. To me, I just think one, he's just a lot more like he's just like his athleticism has improved. Like he's way more explosive with the first with his like. I mean, you can see the highlights on YouTube and Instagram. Like one of his dunks, he could have styled it a little bit more. Like he jumped higher and farther than I've seen him jump, from the baseline and went to the other side of the rim and had plenty. Like he could have done like a windmill dunk there. I'm like, all right, this is a little different. But the thing with Zach to me, that first game, I think it felt like he hadn't played organized ball in a long time. I looked at it, I was like, well, I'm glad they're doing this now so he can get these out the way. Because I don't think he played much like 5-on-5 basketball, so to speak. Or like this is probably his first offseason where he's gone this long a stretch without playing an organized basketball game, if that makes sense. Like I don't, in France, it's an elongated schedule. You play from fall to summer, and then after that you have national team stuff, which is this period right now. But you play less games. In the NBA, it's a condensed schedule. Then you have an extended break until the fall. So, like, this is probably the longest he's gone without playing organized ball. I just think he was like, he was like caught off guard by the skill level of like professional basketball players. And by game two, that kind of went away. Like he was much better contesting shots and like getting in guys' chests and playing with more physicality on the defensive end. Even though like overall the Montenegro game, like he was good defensively overall. It was
Oh yeah.
just the contests were just you wanted better from him because I've seen him. Me and you, Kevin, and even Glenn, like we've seen Zach contest shots. He's a better shot contester than
It
what he
should
was
be
showing.
like one of the things that he's naturally good at. Like
Yeah, yep.
that it should,
So,
you know. Um,
but yeah,
it's a weird team too. Like I mean, first of all, France doesn't have Wembanyama and they don't have, Rudy Gobert, so they're missing some players, and they should be like one of the deepest teams, but they're just so forward and center heavy. It's like they don't have enough guards, so it's gonna be weird. Like, Zach is, if by all accounts, watching these first couple of games, Zach's going to be a complimentary player. Like, you're going to put him in the corner and say, okay, if you need to help anywhere, okay, this guy's going to be open. And if you give him space, he can make shots, he can drive like that. There's no question about that. But it's going to be a complimentary role. He's going to be counting on these guard big pick and roll combinations to break down the defense. And if they don't, there might be some games where he doesn't, have an impact on the game, but it's like, that might be a product of just the overall France offense and not just, what he's doing.
And that goes to my point about the rebounding, where it's like it's going to be really important for him to grab and go. Because honestly, it's going to be their best offense, him bringing the ball up the floor quickly
Right.
to get them into their sets quickly so that they can get open looks and open dunks and open threes. So he's going to have to be a good defensive rebounder, which is what he wasn't in the NBA last year. So it's going to be interesting to see if the added weight will help him here, because like him just simply I can't stress, when you're that big, it forces natural mismatches because somebody has to immediately pick him up the floor, or he's just going to dunk the ball. And so when that happens, somebody else is going to be open. And so like, let's see him make the good right reads there. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not concerned about, like, I know people aren't going to be happy that he's going to be standing in the corner. I don't care about that. Like, that's not, France aren't going to give the keys to a 20-year-old. Like, they're just not going to do that. This team's, even though these guys, the guards they have aren't in the NBA, like, they're good players. Like, they're good, like, EuroLeague basketball players, and they've played a lot of basketball, and they know how to run an offense. Zach doesn't know how to run an offense. He doesn't. So, like, that, it's okay that he doesn't have the ball in his hands to me. It's just going to be important for him to find other ways to contribute to the game, because he's not going to have Trae Young spoon feeding him easy looks for France. So he's going to have to figure it out in different ways, and that will, to me, that's going to help him in the long run here. But yeah, it's Eurobasket should be fun. Like, overall, I'm excited to see when these games really get started, just because of the level of competition going out. It seems like all the stars are playing, so we'll see how France stacks up. But they are a good team. Like, they got a lot of defenders too, so it's just going to be interesting to see how. And one thing in Zach's credit, like, it's pretty clear to me he's one of their 5 best players. And like pretty comfortably one of their 5 best players. And also, like, the coach, I think this coach is the same coach he had his last year in France too. I'm not sure about that, but I think that's what I've read, but I'm not sure. But like, overall, like, it's a good environment for him. He's in a similar role to what he's going to be in Atlanta, so it's going to be interesting how he impacts the game overall.
Yeah, it does seem like France is like you mentioned before, they've been pretty democratic with the minutes, and it's balanced for like 10, 12 guys getting these even minutes, but it does seem like, Zach's getting a little more than most, and I do think that you know, they see him as part of their national team future. Is they're going to
Yeah,
want him as long as they can get him, and they're not going to kind of shelve him now and say, "Hey, young kid, watch and learn." Like, they want to play him now. I mean, the on-court product is already there, so it's not like it's a big loss for them to have to sit through it. But I don't think there's any doubt that they're going to feature him as one of their core players. Like, that seems like a no-brainer here from here.
yeah. I mean, for France's future, he's one of the very few, like, not bigs that can actually is a good shooter, and
Yeah,
actually has other skills in other areas. Like, he's like, it's him and like Bilal, who's playing well, but like,
he
I
is.
don't, I don't, I don't know if I trust the jumper if it holds up against real competition, if that makes sense. But like, it's him and Bilal, and then it's just like, well, we got Timothy Luau Cabarro and uh,
Elia Kobo.
yeah, Isaiah Cordier, former Hawks
Oh yeah, yeah,
draft
he
pick.
played a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So it's pretty thin, unless Nick Batum is going to come out of and give it one last ride for him. But
No,
yeah,
I don't think
it's
he's
pretty thin
eligible.
for
He
him.
hasn't been on any of these rosters. It's
No,
funny
he's not
because
playing. He's not playing in this.
oh, and
I'm
you're
thinking
talking
of
about like
future.
future events.
I'm
Oh
talking
my
about.
goodness. Yeah, he's gonna be really old then. It's funny though with Koulibaly, it's like he's he's more of an on-ball player than Zach is, and you can kind of do it, and it's choppy, and I don't know, like you said, I don't know if I trust the outside shot, but it's like the defense is so much better with him that like maybe the discrepancy between him and the real guards is small enough that the bonus that you get from defense at times it might be worth it to play through him a little bit. I don't know. He has piqued my curiosity. I kind of want to see a lot of him in this event and see if they can, because if you're playing him and Zach and Alex Sarr, and you're going to have such ridiculous length and defense against some of these European teams, like if you could just get enough offense, like it seems like they should be one of the real favorites. But I guess we'll have to see. Did you get to see any of Kristaps at all?
No, I've only saw the highlights of his. I mean, he looks good to me. So that's great to see considering he has some type of illness that seems to be in the past. So like he looks good. Um, just hope he gets through this. And I don't worry like worrying about injuries, even with guys who are injury prone, like that's just not productive for me. So I'm sure he's going to be fine. But that is has to be in the back of your mind when talking about Kristaps. Uh, One thing I did see in the highlights, I would like to see him. Well, he might not do it here, but I do. I would like to see him be more competitive when he's out there on the perimeter instead of just like hands down and just whatever. But it was the first game, so
On
he's a
defense or
veteran.
up? You talking about defense? Yeah.
Yeah, defense.
Okay.
It was the first game, so I'm sure he's going to be fine overall. But they are going to need him to like the team he's on. Like they're going to need him to be the sun, moon, and stars. So like hopefully he can get through it. Is my takeaway.
Yeah. With it, it's weird because the roster that he's playing with, like he's with the exception of Davis Bertans, like he's just head and shoulders above the competition level of his teammates. So with Italy, they were just like, yeah, we're just going to switch everything so that you can't get an edge, and then he would try to post, and they would just be super physical with him. So it was hard to get a feel for it because it was either like he he drew enough attention where he could get off a kick out pass or they fouled him. That was just like the result of every switch. So it was like it was hard to get a good feel, but he did look like he kept his wind the entire time. Like he had one stint where he played 8 minutes in a row, and the end of that 8 minutes didn't look a whole lot different than the beginning of the 8 minutes. So it looked like he kept up like his cardio the whole time. And like you said, it's a risk, but I think for somebody who missed so much time due to illness, I think in a way it's helpful for him to get this out of the way now and just be like, hey, I can do this, I can play, I can feel good. And then, if he does manage to stay healthy, like then it's a bonus that he played this event because he got back to action somewhere else, and he can kind of come into the Hawks season in full swing. Um the only thing was like I felt like maybe the one little bit of fatigue that you might have seen creep into his game was like in the second half, like there was the whole game. It was just a ton of pick and pop actions for Kristaps, and it was a lot of switches. And when he had space on those switches and was shooting over them, like it wasn't a big deal for him to get the shot off, but it felt like his shot preparation got a little bit sloppy, and you could kind of see the fatigue where he wasn't really getting his legs under him and getting his body lined up before the ball got there, and he was trying to kind of do it after the ball got there, and it was like those jump shots got a little bit sloppy near the end, but to me it looked like he didn't look like a player who might have the kind of doubts, you know, physically just because of the way the last year or so has gone for him. So I thought he looked really good. Is there anything else? Ellie John Njai is gone from Eurobasket. He left the Spain team with shoulder soreness. Probably. I wonder how much that was incurred by the fact that he ended up on the B team instead of the A team for Spain. Um, let's see. Niko Juricic didn't even make the preliminary roster for Serbia, so you're not going to see him. And Beats playing for Czech Republic, so that's the one that's a little bit interesting because like for Zach and Kristaps, they're just going to do the things that they normally do. For Vita, it seems like he's maybe going to get his role stretched in a way that he sees things a little bit differently than he might see for the Hawks. So that's kind of an interesting one to watch. But I think they've only had one game so far, so I haven't seen all that much of it, and it didn't. I don't know. Again, it's a little bit like the Kristaps thing where he's a little bit better than his a little bit better level of competition than the players that he's playing with, so he gets a little bit extra attention. So it's going to be interesting to see. Anything else? Anything you're looking for in when the schedule comes out this week? What do you think, Glenn?
I mean, it's always interesting to see like when that big West Coast road trip is. Is that earlier or later this season? That road trip is grueling and a grind. That's the one that kind of jumps out at you. And then just I mean, you could run it through Chat GPT or something to ask like, do they have more back to backs and threes and fives than everyone else? And that kind of stuff. But I mean, the schedule is the schedule. You play the schedule they give you. And yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see with their better roster when we start learning about how many national primetime games they get. Do they get more? Because they have a more kind of premium roster this year. So that's another kind of interesting data point to track.
Anything you're looking for on the schedule, Tyler?
Not particularly. I'm not a schedule person, like, because like the schedule is so dependent on the health of the roster, like how good or bad the schedule is. Like that's how it's felt the last couple of years. Like Hawks have their toughest tests when everybody's hurt, and it's just like, well, what are we learning from this? That they're injured, they're not at their best. So, like that's I'm just what it means is we're inching closer to the regular season, which is what I'm excited for. Like for these games to actually start and see how this rotation looks and how this team looks instead of what we think about what it looks like in theory. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But the schedule's whatever. They play 82 games, and they might have an 83rd game in the in-season tournament if they make it to the championship game. So that's kind of it for me.
Yeah, the thing I always look at is like it seems like historically like the schedule has some consistency from year to year. Like they schedule the same opponents in roughly the same time of year. It's not completely that way, but like the Clippers, like they always seem to play the Clippers in like the first week of January, like every single year. And so like one of the things that I feel like has been consistent over the past 10, 12 seasons is that you know, the Hawks will start out the season in late October, and like the first week, there'll be a couple good teams, a couple bad teams, some on the home, some on the road. And then it seems like once you get 4 or 5 games into the season, it always seems like there's a murderer's row where you got 7 of 10 on the road, and a bunch of those games against like the very best teams in the NBA. And so that's the first thing that I'm going to look at when I see the schedule is, what happens in early November, 5, 6 games into the season? Is it that stretch where you've got some decent sized road trips against some tough Eastern Conference foes? It seems like they always seem to get that And so that's the first thing I'm looking at. And then other than that, it seems like everything balances out. They always seem to get like the easy March, which isn't necessarily the friendliest thing because again, like Tyler said, so much of it is dependent on injuries. And by the time you get to March, that's when you've got these teams that are no longer invested that might have been because they got this weird injury. And it doesn't seem like getting the soft part of your schedule in March is as impactful as it is to maybe get it in November. So I guess that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that late March push, the Hawks are pretty consistent winning a lot of games when teams are out. So hopefully they can win some games early. They give themselves a cushion, and then we can worry about seeding and who they're going to play in the first round compared to what they've done the last couple of years. So that's what ultimately to look out for with the schedule. But like I said, I'm a games person, so once the games start, then the schedule will be weak or strong, depending on how the team looks and what their condition is during that time.
All right. Thank you for joining me on our random Wednesday in August. And hopefully there are some interesting things that happen soon and we can do this again.
Good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Bye, Bob.